Hi everyone, my name is Mick McConnell. My details are in the bio below. This is the first video I've ever made in my life, so if it doesn't look good, please forgive me. I'll try and make it the best I can. I've been a family doctor for almost 40 years now, and in my life, roughly 250,000 face-to-face consultations and maybe up to 1 million consultations of all other types, telephone, letter, etc. So I'm an incredibly experienced practicing physician. It doesn't matter what people say about me, what they think about me. They cannot take that away from me. So I'm going to read you out something here, just looking at my computer. And this is what doctors are meant to be. In relation to how they deal with you. So this is the guidelines from the Irish Medical Council in relation to how a medical doctor is supposed to deal with patients. So if we go with general principles, medical professionalism is a core element of being a good doctor. Good medical practice is based on the relationship of trust between profession and society, in which doctors are expected to meet the highest standards of professional practice and behaviour. It involves a partnership between patients and doctors that is based on mutual respect, confidentiality, honesty, responsibility, and accountability. Now, let's read those last 5 again. Mutual respect, confidentiality, honesty, responsibility, and accountability. So who is supposed to be accountable to whom? Well, I presume looking at this, it means that the doctor is supposed to be accountable to the patient. They're supposed to be honest with the patient, and they're supposed to be responsible when they act with the patient in reaching a decision or a conclusion about a matter. So it goes on and it says that the doctors must show integrity, compassion and concern, develop and sustain sensitive and understanding attitudes, exercise good judgment, and communicate sound clinical advice to patients. This is what it says. I'm not making this up. Search for the best evidence. Oh my God. To guide your professional practice. So you're supposed to search for the best evidence. It says that right here in the rule book. You get the idea, I'm sure, right? So let's go on a little bit. Section 4.1. Your paramount professional responsibility is to act in the best interest of your patient. This takes priority over responsibilities to your colleagues and your employers. So, paramount. Paramount means primum in Latin, above all other things. Taken straight from the old Hippocratic Oath. It goes on about the dignity of the patient, protection of children, conscientious objection, refusal to treat. But it's there that what we have to do is be honest, act with responsibility, and accountability. We have to be sensitive and nice to people, but above all, we have to put the patient first, and we have to practice evidence-based medicine. So, what is evidence-based medicine? The question of what is a belief and what is evidence-based is a question that has gone back in human history 2.5 millennia in the West anyway, and God knows how long before that. And it's best summed up in a story by way of a story that's in the philosopher Plato's book, The Republic. Plato was a philosopher that came after Socrates, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. And he attempted to explain what he thought Socrates' philosophy was. So in this book that Plato wrote, he recounts the story of Socrates, where Socrates imagines there are two groups of people. There are two groups of people, both of who want to go to a town called Larissa. And they have the choice between a guide who says that he knows the way to Larissa and someone who believes he knows the road to Larissa. And there is only these two choices. There's the person who believes they know and the person who says they know. So they both set out, one with the believer, one with the one with knowledge. And the strange thing is that they end up in Larissa, both groups. So Socrates poses the question, what is the difference between true belief or true opinion and actual knowledge? Well, in the case of this, there is no difference because they both ended up in Larissa. And this is a really, really silly little story, but it is really important. So you can look at that story and you can take it on its face that if the same outcome occurs, if the same result happens from an opinion as opposed to knowledge, then there is no difference between the two. Socrates, of course, knew that intuitively this wasn't right. It couldn't be right. For starters, how did the person who believed that he knew the road to Larissa come by that belief? It could only have come from some divine source, from some God handing it down from the mountain, whatever you want. Whereas the guy who has knowledge of the road to Larissa can explain to you how he came about the knowledge. Because did he make the journey before? Did he have it written down on a map? Had he talked to other people who had been there? So you can see that immediately one of the differences between belief and knowledge is that belief can simply be held, not explained. But knowledge must be explained. Otherwise, it's a belief. So the first thing to say is that knowledge has evidence, and the evidence can be interrogated. So if this guy who knows the road to Larissa is spoofing people in the pub, and there's a guy beside him who happens to know, because he's a tour guide and he knows the route to Larissa, he happens to know he's lying, then he can falsify the statement that the charlatan is making. And this falsification process is how we verify that something is true. We do not verify it by saying it's true. We verify it by setting out to prove it is not true. Once we have proven it is not true, then we have added to the sum of our knowledge by adding yet another false belief to the endless list of false beliefs. So rather than prove that you're right in what you say, you have to open yourself up for other people to prove that you're wrong in what you say. So evidence-based medicine means that you have to subject yourself to the scrutiny of others in everything you say. That's evidence-based medicine. So, for instance, if the public health officials in the Republic of Ireland tell you that a certain thing is safe and effective, they have to tell you why or how they came to that conclusion. Because unless they do that, then we can't question how they came to that conclusion. So if they boldly make a statement but do not provide any evidence to back up the statement, they are not practicing evidence-based medicine. They are practicing belief-based medicine, which is entirely contrary to what they're supposed to do. So there's a handful of us in this country, about 20 that I know of, that are subject to investigation by our august body, the Irish Medical Council, because we have been unprofessional, because we questioned something. We questioned a narrative, a story, a belief system. We questioned it. And the reason we questioned it was that we wanted to establish whether or not there was sufficient knowledge and truth in the evidence base to verify this as being true. This particular exercise is called epistemology. It's a well road-worn method of separating belief from knowledge. You don't practice something on the basis that you believe it to be true, that if I send you to walk 3 times around the magic well, that your arthritis will go away, because that's fraudulent. Now, you might walk 3 times around that well and your arthritis might disappear, but that's not because you walk 3 times around the well. Your arthritis is going to disappear anyway. And if I was to say it to my patients, I tell you what, I know this guy and he walked 3 times around this magic well and his arthritis went away. And if you pay me, I will tell you where this magic well is. I would be acting fraudulently. I would not be acting with knowledge. I would be acting with knowledge that it was BS, what I was telling people. So having established on a very, very simple level, and we can go into this in detail later on, but on a very, very simple level, there is an enormous difference between belief and knowledge. Belief, there is no requirement on you to explain why you believe something. There's no requirement on you to explain if you hold a belief at all. That's essentially religion, and it's your own private business. But science is based on sharing everything with people so that they can falsify your claim that what you're saying is true. And once they falsify that claim, it is no longer true. So it's really, really important to understand that any claim made in science that is subsequently falsified by another scientist or anyone else for that matter is no longer true. So if you say that a certain substance is safe and effective, and it is clearly not safe and effective because the evidence shows that it's not safe and effective, then you are the person, the one making the claim that it is safe and effective. They are the person who is acting in an unprofessional way, and they should be hauled up before the courts to explain why they are saying what they're saying, why they are breaking the rules of practicing as a doctor. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to read just one of over 1,000 peer-reviewed articles that I have personally that show what we will call the vax. Vaxation, vax, hacks. I tell you what, we'll call it the hacks. So anyone who's been hexed recently because of a public health measure, that's an international problem, or supposedly an international problem. If you've been hexed, this applies to you. So I'm just going to read this out to you now. Again, I don't know what this is going to look like. Hopefully you can hear my voice, and I'm going to read the article to you, and you can hear what other scientists are saying that is different than safe and effective. So let's try it. So this is an article from the National Library of Medicine in the United States, National Institute of Health, Mr. Fauci's organization. And it is written by, Stephanie Seneff, Greg Nye, Anthony Kiropoulos, and Peter McCullough. Now these are all extremely well-versed people, but their bios and, their author information, article notes, copyright, all that stuff, it's all with the article. So you can falsify it if you wish, but this is what it is. All of these articles start out with what's called an abstract, and the abstract is basically a little summation of what they found when they looked at the evidence, and then they go on usually to explain what the evidence is and the reason that they say this is knowledge and not belief. So the messenger RNA hexes were brought to market in response to a public health crisis. The utilization of these hexes in the context of infectious disease has no precedent. Has no precedent means we don't know anything at all about the use of these things. No precedent, no knowledge. You have belief, you have theory, but you do not have knowledge. The many alterations in the vaccine hide the messenger RNA from cellular defenses and promote a longer biological half-life and high production of spike protein. However, the immune response to the vaccine is very different from that to the SARS-CoV-2 infection. In this paper, we present evidence that vaccination induces a profound impairment in type 1 interference signaling. So to try and put that into context of what interference signaling means. Interferon is what is called a cytokine. So a cytokine is basically a protein, a chemical. There are 50 of them in the body. This is just one of them, but it's one of the major ones that tell your immune system kind of where to look, what to go, where to look, what to do. It communicates between the different parts of the different separate parts of the immune system. So you could think of it like the input into Google Maps. So you want to get to, Dublin from Callum. You first of all have to take out your phone. So your hand is one cytokine, your phone is another cytokine, the screen on your phone is another cytokine, your finger popping into it is the other cytokine. Eventually, when you tool up all the actions and different inputs that you make into the phone to get the direction from A to B, you have gone through all these cytokines. So with one of those stages, even one of those stages, say taking out the phone, then you can't complete the exercise because one of them is missing. So that is basically all that means. All that means is that there's a profound, not subtle, profound impairment in type 1 interference signaling, which has diverse adverse consequences to human health. Immune cells that have taken up the hex nanoparticles released into circulation large numbers of what are called exosomes. You don't need to worry what they are. They're nuclear material that will serve a benign or malign purpose that you don't really know. They're floating around you all the time. But what it's saying is the immune cells that have taken up the vaccine nanoparticles release into circulation large numbers of exosomes containing spike protein along with critical micro ribonucleic acids that induce a signaling response in recipient cells at distant sites. So, in other words, they're following the cytokine pathway. So they are affecting cells further away than from where you put the injection in. We also identify potential profound disturbances in regulatory controls of protein synthesis and cancer surveillance. So there is what's known as the central dogma of biology, that DNA makes RNA, makes proteins. So the entirety of your body is put together by that simple little DNA makes RNA, makes proteins. So DNA is the blueprint of everything. And in order to execute the blueprint and have it operate in the real world, the medium by which that happens is messenger RNA. So messenger RNA is similar to DNA, but it serves a very discrete purpose, very simple purpose, in that it instructs for the production of proteins anywhere in the body. That could be a muscle protein, heart protein, connective tissue protein. It can be any type of protein. And the mechanism of producing this is always the same. DNA makes RNA, makes protein. So we have here potential profound disturbances in regulatory control of protein synthesis. So it doesn't say so far what these proteins are. What it is implying already is that the mechanism of making proteins, which is the mechanism by which you remain alive, is profoundly affected. So it may not be possible to say where this is having effects. So profound are the dangers of messing around with protein synthesis. But it also mentions cancer surveillance. And cancer surveillance happens in the body because in a very simple way, the way the immune system works, particularly the innate immune system, this is the built-in immune system of the body, the way it works is that it looks at shapes in the same way that we look at faces, or we look at people we know, and we know who they are because we know the shape of their face. We know a tree is a tree because we know the shape of the tree. We know a fish is a fish because we know the shape of the fish. And this is the way that recognition of shapes or form in nature is how everything is distinguished. From a star to a goldfish, they have distinct shapes and forms. And so do proteins. And when your body sees a protein it recognizes, it knows what it is, and it allows it to carry on with its function inside your body. If it doesn't know what it is, it's certainly going to interrogate it to find out what it is. And if it doesn't like the answer, it will destroy it. Because as far as your immune system is concerned, this could be incredibly toxic. And one of the main areas where the human body does this is in cancer surveillance. So at any one time in your body, there is cancerous processes going on where cells are suddenly beginning to act on their own volition. They're not acting under the control of the base DNA. They're acting under their own instruction. And as a result of that, they start to produce different shapes and different proteins that are picked up by your immune system and destroyed because they don't fit in. And this is happening inside your body all the time, every minute, every second of every day. You are killing cells that are or could go on to become malignant. And that is why most of us will get through our lives, 2/3 of us will get through our lives without cancer. And the 1/3 that do get through their life but with cancer, when they develop cancer in the course of their life, we don't know how many other cancers they have headed off. in the process of getting to where they are. So cancer surveillance, protein synthesis, profound disturbances of regulation. These are not small things. They are not small things. Now, it goes on to say, to finish off the abstract, we also identify potential profound disturbances. Oh, I did that bit. These disturbances potentially have a causal link to neurodegenerative diseases, myocarditis, immune thrombocytopenia, and tumorigenesis. So these disturbances, these profound signaling responses of recipients at distant sites, these protein mess up, all of this stuff ends up producing neurodegeneration. So neurodegeneration means that your nervous cells just cease working. And the nervous cells in old money were what were called primary cells. So they cannot really replicate. Once they're damaged, and that's it. You can find new neural pathways around the damaged nerve, but once you damage the nerve itself, it just can't regenerate because it's a primary cell. Myocarditis, that is anything that has itis at the end of it in medicine, is inflammation. And inflammation comes from the Latin word that means conflagration. And conflagration is the burning down of a building. So you have this sudden setting fire of something, reaches a peak and burns out. That is what inflammation is. And inflammation in the human body happens with every single attack on the human body, whether it's a traumatic attack or a bacterial infection or whatever it is. It always creates this inflammation, which is incredibly destructive process if it's not properly regulated and properly controlled. So your doctor may have given you anti-inflammatory medicines, for instance, to reduce pain that inflammation causes, because you don't really need to have the inflammation there all the time. And inflammation is such a blunt instrument, a necessary instrument, but it is very often present when it doesn't need to be, or present certainly at very, very high intensity when it doesn't need to be. But they're saying that it causes myocarditis, a damage to your heart. Now again, your heart myocardium is the muscle of your heart, and it's a primary cell. It cannot be repaired. If you get myocarditis, you will lose that cell. When that cell is lost, it can't be replaced. Your body, in the process of healing, will replace it with calcium, scarring, puckering, as you see on someone who may have a scar on their face. I have a scar, pucker here. That's what replaces in your heart with this stuff. And impaired DNA damage response. So the other thing that happens in your body is your DNA just doesn't sit there in a permanent state of perfection. It has to be fixed because it breaks all the time too. So you have all these other chemicals and little enzymes and little things running around your cells, repairing your DNA all the time. So that when you repair the DNA, it will continue to do the job right. If you don't repair it, it's going to continue to do the job wrong. And you don't know what signal it's going to send out via the messenger RNA, and you don't know which proteins it's going to make that it didn't make before. You really have no idea what is going to happen when you impair the damage or impair the ability of DNA to repair itself. And finally, it says, we show evidence from the VAERS, that's the American database of surveillance of side effects of drugs, that is a self-reporting database. So this is not where a pharmacovigilance type of situation where the drug companies who manufacture these things actually go out and look for problems. This is where VAERS is where people report problems spontaneously that they find themselves. So they're notoriously inaccurate, very, very low levels of reporting in them, compared to if you actually go and look. So what this is saying is that we show evidence from the VAERS database supporting our hypothesis. We believe a comprehensive risk-benefit assessment of the HAX vaccine questions them as positive contributors to public health. So there it is out there. Just this article is published on the online on the 22nd of June in the journal Food Chem Toxicology is the journal where this one is in. I will leave the link below. This one is probably the worst of these that I have actually seen yet. And just by way of introduction, I have told you what doctors are supposed to do. I have told you basically what or how to distinguish between belief and knowledge, and that the key difference is that knowledge can be falsified, interrogated and falsified. So can this knowledge. So can this knowledge. But the only way that you can verify or falsify knowledge is by debate. And you cannot take the first part of this message that I'm giving you, that this is what doctors are supposed to do. You cannot take that, set it aside for whatever reason. It doesn't matter why you're doing it, whether you think you're doing it for a good reason, whether you're overtly doing it for a bad reason, it doesn't matter. The purpose of separating belief from knowledge is that this type of thing does not happen. So what I'm going to do, I'll finish with you now. This is the first video I've made. I don't even know what it's going to look like, what it's going to sound like. I'm very grateful that anyone who watches it, you have to take notice of what this is saying. So I'm going to go through the article. I'm going to read it and see what I think about what it says. But these are very, very serious. There are very, very serious implications if even one fraction of what these people say are true. Because if you think of it the way I think of it, in 1945, the Americans dropped a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Before that, there was, as it says in this article, no precedent for the use of a nuclear bomb because we'd never used one before. So we didn't know. We knew that we'd kill a lot of people and cause a lot of damage, but we did not know what effects it would have years after it was exploded, and indeed generations after it was exploded. And the effects that it had were incredibly profound, and we learned a huge amount from that awful decision to use unprecedented technology in a random, haphazard and vicious way. We learned an awful lot. One thing we did learn was radiation and nuclear weapons are absolutely terrible weapons. They are the weapons of the devil, if all weapons are not. But they have consequences far, far, far beyond anything that the human mind could imagine. With these messenger RNA vaccines, what they are doing, in effect, is messing about in exactly the same way as the nuclear explosion messed about. So there was a lot of people who died in those nuclear bombs. They died from the direct effects of the explosion. They died within days of it from radiation sickness, and they died within years from it, from cancers, and they passed on abnormalities and all kinds of things into the future because it was unprecedented We didn't know that they would do this. So this article uses the word no precedent, and it uses the term profound. So it does not pull punches. It says it has within it the explanation of what it's saying. So I'm going to look at the article, I'm going to read it, I'm going to get back to you, and I'm going to say what I think about it. But I think we have to get away from this notion that we could ever call safe and effective anything other than a marketing slogan. And I've said to YouTube as well, you can censor me, you can take me down, I don't really care what you do. You will never be able to contain the damage that this will do to society if even a fraction of what this paper says turns out to be true. And there will be no hiding place for anyone, no hiding place for anyone who has willingly participated in the use of these things under the guise that they were safe and effective. If they had even the slightest inkling that they were not safe, they should have said so. They should have said, we don't know. We can offer you this. We don't know if it's effective. We don't know if it's safe. But they should not have offered it to people on the basis that they did know, because that was a belief and not knowledge. And as we've seen at the very start, every doctor has to practice evidence-based medicine. So we'll get back to this in the next broadcast I do. I'll check out what this sound and video and stuff looks like. And there are many, many other messages about the hacks that I want to bring to you, to bring to your attention so that you can inform yourself. So thank you and good night.